We're here. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Adam Johnson, twoways10days.com, and this is The Grind on all things NBA G League. We got a great show for you today. Lined up talking about the Santa Cruz Warriors starting with 8-0 start. Vanderblue jumping up to third in the scoring charts for NBA G League career. Team USA roster announced. We're going to kind of give a deep dive into that and my thoughts on that, as well as the prospect path. The league announced that Allison Feaster and Rod Strickland, NBA veteran, would be leading the way for those high school to G League contracts. They're going to pay prospects $125,000 to play in the G League. So we'll see about that. But first, I want to give a shout out to the website twoways10days.com. It's our site for all things NBA G League right here. As you can see, give it a full screen right there. Got a lot of great stuff up there. Excited to have Liam Doyle join us on board here. Doing some great work as far as scouting reports. Did a whole deep dive into the Texas Legends. You can take a look at it here. Just great breakdowns from him. I always ask for people that want to contribute. For some reason, I get hesitant to pull the trigger. And I've kind of accept the fact that more help and people that want to write for the site's always a good thing. More contributions are better than less. So this is a way to add more to the site and something that's maybe not my strongest suit. I'm more of a profile player, story type. Scouting is really not my thing. I try and do some basic scouting when I'm watching games, but nothing like this. So Liam does a great job here. You can kind of see what he's seeing. He has video examples as well, breaking it all down. Exactly. So we'll be seeing more of those as well throughout the season. So make sure to give him a follow. I think he's at Liam Doyle NBA on Twitter. So make sure you give him a shout out. Also, let's see here. NBA G League audio interviews. So last year, I was posting these on the Patreon for the Patreon supporters. With the Twitch show this year and other things that I've got going on, it really wasn't feasible for me to continue the Patreon from a financial standpoint, and that being that the work being put involved, and not that I'm not grateful for people that want to contribute their dollars, but to keep up with it. But at the same time, they should be a priority, and it's unfair to them if I don't feel like I can give them the content they need. So what I'm doing now is making these public. So I started with my Stockton Kings head coach Ty Ellis pregame interview from the opening night in Santa Cruz. For those that don't know, that's my home base is Santa Cruz. So that you're going to see a lot of content from that angle as teams come through. So I've got about, we're 5 home games in, so I probably have about 15, 20 interviews already that I could post. I just need to get them up on the site. That's something I'm going to be working on over the next few days. So be on the lookout for that. This will always be updated throughout the season. And it's free. You don't have to pay anything. If you just want a little insight into the coaches and as they roll through and kind of the questions we ask them. It's great content to get to hear from the coaches themselves for a few minutes and see what their perspective is. And it's great because every coach, it's unique. You think they all have similar philosophies, but they don't. One of the things that fascinated me about Ty Ellis was that he says he blocks his schedule out in 5-game increments, and he wants to go 3-2 in each block of 5. Ends up winning then a 30-game season, a 30-win season at that point. So I thought that was pretty interesting to discuss that and sort of building small goals towards a larger goal. I never heard that before. You do hear about teams and coaches and players talking about one game at a time and not looking too far ahead. But this is kind of interesting to see a smaller goal towards a larger one, which is kind of fascinating to me. So be sure to check that out as well if you want to listen there. Also, Greg Levinsky had a chance to chat with Walt Lemon, two-way player for the Boston Celtics, who was playing for the Maine Red Claws this year. Two-way player. He played for the Fort Wayne Mad Ants last year, was an MVP candidate last season. Check that out, a great interview there. Just saying how he wants to be there. He wants to stay in the NBA. He's not going to give up, even though it is just a two-way player. He wants to maintain that NBA career, and this is how he's going to go about it. So make sure you check that out as well. Moving on here, first topic. USA Men's World Cup qualifying team announced for November. So there's 2 games that are going to take place in November. The team will train November 23rd to 25th at the Houston Rockets practice facility and will continue second round action of FIBA World Cup qualifying play with a pair of challenging road games. November 29th versus Argentina and Uruguay. So, I mean, the USA so far has only lost 1 game in FIBA qualifying. That's to Mexico, which, I mean, by all accounts, it's pretty good for guys that are considered second tier and, not NBA players. So it just speaks to the volume, the value that NBA G League talent really has. As much as we want to knock it, they are getting it done, so to speak. So this is quite an achievement for them. So let's kind of break down this roster real quick. Joel Berry II, South Bay. Reggie Hearn, Stockton Kings. Scotty Hopson, Oklahoma City Blue. John Jenkins, DeAndre Liggins, Eric Moreland, Chasen Randall, Cameron Reynolds, Richard Solomon, Jarnell Stokes, Travis Trice, and Tyler Zeller. So a couple free agents there. You've got Eric Moreland, Jarnell Stokes, Tyler Zeller, free agents who aren't on G League rosters, but they are available to play in this event. So big ups to them. It's not easy for these G League teams because they're missing players now for a couple weeks, especially from the 23rd of November, which is yesterday if my calendar's right, up until December 2nd. So it's like a 10-day departure from your G League team. And, you can play 2, 3, 4 games in that span, and that's a chunk of the season when you only play 50 games. So these teams are going to be hurting, especially the ones that are missing more than one player. So Reggie Hearn and Cameron Reynolds for Stockton, and Scotty Hopson and Richard Solomon for Oklahoma City. So there's no way to legislate this. I totally get it. You want the best players regardless of where they come from, and maybe it speaks to the talent level that these teams are able to recruit. But I wish there was a way where teams could lose only one player, at least from USA, right? Because it's not only the USA that's represented, it's Canada, it's Mexico, it's other teams too. The Santa Cruz Warriors are going to lose Juan Toscano Anderson to Team Mexico for this time. So imagine if they had Mexico and someone else from Team USA taken from their roster, would deplete them, essentially. So obviously you're not going to tell a guy no for an opportunity to play for Team USA and wear those colors. But I kind of wish and hope the league would kind of step in and say, okay, to kind of mandate this and tell Team USA to select one player from each team, which would be preferred. And maybe they are doing that, and this is the best they could do. I certainly don't know that, but I wish there was a way to sort of legislate that. So we're going to pull this up here in a second. I just kind of want to show the transactions page. The reason being is because you can see here, you can kind of see Jordan Howard acquired from the Legends for the player pool. He was in training camp with the Santa Cruz Warriors. But you can come kind of down here. The 19th is, I believe, when these rosters were announced. So you can kind of see all these players that were acquired. Marcus Posley, I'm guessing he's acquired because they're losing DeAndre Liggins. Adam Woodbury, Janet Regbu for Stockton, for Cam Reynolds, and Reggie Hearn. Devin Sweetney for Chasen Randall, Duje Ducan for Oklahoma City Blue. But yeah, so you get to pick players from the available player pool, but they're not going to match, obviously, the talent that you're missing. So it's basically an extra warm body for you. And you can kind of see all these players that were taken. Maverick Rowan for John Jenkins. So you can kind of see Vander Blue also returned, but that's from a separate trade. Should be interesting to say the least. But you kind of see here these players, no disrespect to them, certainly. They're on the cusp of the league. But you're not going to be able to replace those the talent that's provided by those top-tier players. So, and especially difficult when you're missing 2 guys. So, like I said, I kind of want to reiterate that they should, it's my perspective, right? So, and it could be way off, but just on the surface, looking on the outside, looking in, I would like to see if the league could perhaps suggest or mandate that USA can only pick one player from each team in that essence, because it is kind of a burden to weigh for a team, even if it is just a few weeks. Those few games could make the difference for playoffs or not. So, and everyone needs to sacrifice. So let's share the sacrifice a bit more, I guess. And maybe they did the best they could because they did take some players that are free agents, Jarnell Stokes and Tyler Zeller as well. So maybe they were able to do that to just kind of alleviate taking players from multiple teams. But I still would like to see them limit themselves to one player a team. But is that realistic? Probably not, unfortunately. So we shall see. All right, moving on here. Vander Blue beat the scoring record last night. He moved to third in all-time in G League history. He's only behind Reynaldo Major and Elijah Millsap, I believe. He surpassed Ron Howard, Mr. Mad Ant himself, in scoring. Only had 2 points last night, 0 for 4, 31 minutes. He was just acquired via trade from the South Bay Lakers. The Lakers received the rights to Joe Bolomboy as well. Bolomboy is playing overseas in Russia, I believe. So we probably won't see him this year. That's for a future acquisition, most likely. The Herd need all the help they can get. I believe they are 1-7 now on the season. It's kind of tough for them. They are missing Travis Trice now due to Team USA, so that certainly doesn't help their cause. You can kind of look down here on the other notes here. Luke Cornett, 33 minutes, 25 points. Billy Garrett, 22 points. He's doing phenomenal for Westchester. So kudos and congratulations to Vander Blue for the achievement last night. But you got to believe Wisconsin needs a little more firepower in order to get this season back on track. We've seen teams do it before. We've had a couple teams last year that started 5-10 that were able to turn around and make the postseason. Namely, I believe it was the Erie Bayhawks and the Raptors 905. So it is possible. We could even, in fact, go look at the standings right now and see for ourselves just exactly where it is, just so we can kind of make sure we're as accurate as possible. That's the key. And so we could take a look at the standings right now. 1-8, Wisconsin Herd. They're on a 7-game losing streak. Man, that's tough. You gotta believe they can eke out a win here or there. They did lose by 56 points to the Westchester Knicks on Friday night in the first game of a back-to-back, so that's tough. Kudos to South Bay, though. They lost 152-112 to Sioux Falls on Friday, but turned around and got the W the next night. Kind of shows you the pendulum swing of the G League. You can have one bad night, you turn around and have even better night and be successful. So we can take a look at the Western Conference and Santa Cruz 8-0. We'll dive into that in a little bit. Sioux Falls Skyforce right behind them at 8-2. Oklahoma City 6-2. RGV Vipers 6-3. I believe RGV is undefeated at home. I think they're 4 or 5-0 in their new digs. So shout out to them and Joseph Blair. Memphis Hustle 4-3. And then you kind of see this log jam here between Agua Caliente and Texas. Just a couple games, 1 game difference here realistically between these teams. Separation there. Even Iowa, there's 2 games back. And that's going to change, obviously. You might see some teams move. During the last few games here because of the USA qualifying. Stockton might lose a few because they're without 2 of their stars. Texas might move up. They have their whole roster, I believe. Oklahoma City Blue, they're 6-2. Maybe they end 6-4, 6-5. In fact, I think they're playing right now. As a matter of fact, we got 10 a.m. tip-off. Fascinating. Sunday G League basketball, nothing like it. So, Northern Arizona's 2-8. This record I don't think is indicative of the talent they have. They really need interior presence, in my opinion. They have Eric Studeville, who has made big strides this year. Jawan Evans has shown up for them too, and they claimed him off of waivers. And Peter Jock is great as well. But they really need interior presence to kind of complement their outside shooting. So, who knows? There are players that are available that can do that for you. Chinano Onawaku is one for the Greensboro Swarm. He's a free agent. Maybe they could take a flyer on him with the 2-way if he's interested. I'd like to see him. He can run. He played the up-tempo style with the RGV Vipers and the Houston Rockets, so he's familiar with that system too. So we'll see. But I don't think this is indicative, and the reason why I say that is they've already played Santa Cruz 3 times this year, and Santa Cruz undefeated. So if you get a few games there, maybe they are 4-6 instead of 2-8. It is kind of strange to have teams that are in your own division play so many times. The Warriors, in fact, will play Agua Caliente Clippers tomorrow, which will also be the 3rd time they face that team too. So 6 of their first 9 games are against those 2 teams. Pretty interesting scheduling. I think you'd want that separated, maybe 2 games in the first month and 2 games in the back end to kind of bookend the season with divisional games. But remains to be seen. This still needs to be some separation here. A lot of parity here early on. Again, we're less than 10 games into the season. Still pretty early. Feels like a lot of games in a short period of time. The season did tip off on November 3rd, so it's the 25th. So 1 game every 3 days or so for some of these teams, if not less. 10 games for Sioux Falls, and we're 22 games in the season, so they've got a lot of games, and they've shortened the season, though, when you think about it. They're starting right after the NBA season, and they want the G League season to end before the NBA playoffs begin. So there's a lot of games to fit in there, same 50 games, basically scrunched or compacted into basically practically a month less, it feels like. So that's the challenge that you're going to face. So you've seen a lot of teams play some back-to-backs already. Yeah, and this is where we're at. We can look at the East again, kind of favoring the West here. Westchester Knicks, Mike Miller's got them off to a great start again, 8-3. Lana Nets 5-2, started the season 4-0. They're 1-2 in the last 3. Raptors 905, Jama Malalela is doing great things up there. Grand Rapids Driver 5-3, and Grand Rapids Driver probably had the best jerseys so far. Those '90s throwback Pistons jerseys. I think I showcased them here. Florida Mad Ants 3-3. Again, still early. I really like what I see out of Edmund Sumner and Alize Johnson, their Simon two-way player. They've been fantastic. It's great to see Edmund Sumner contribute as well. Bayhawks 4-4. Terrence Jones laying it up for Erie. He's been a major contributor to their success. Started out the season a little slow out the gate, that team, but now they've won 2. Greensboro Swarm started the season 3-0. They're 1-4 over the last 5. Interesting, to say the least. Haven't had a chance to deep dive into that. But, it's a season is about of ups and downs. So, when you think you're at your highest, you're probably not. When you think you're at your lowest, you're probably not either. So, you can always get better or worse. So, it's about weathering the storm in the G League. All right. What do we got here? Let's see. What's next? Let's talk Prospect Path, shall we? The NBA G League has been discussing the Prospect Path. It was announced, I believe, last month, courtesy of Jonathan Givony of DraftExpress.com/ESPN now, I suppose. But the league took a step further by hiring Rod Strickland and Allison Feaster to lead the Prospect Path. So we can kind of break this down a bit. So for those that don't know, Prospect Path is where the NBA, or the G League essentially, is offering select contracts, as they're calling them, to potential prospects, 18-year-olds out of high school, where they will pay them $125,000 to be in the G League for a season. They still haven't figured out the whole process as far as how teams will acquire those players. We can dive into that in a bit as well. But what you see here is, Rod Strickland's going to be leading this path. The league, quote, tapped basketball executives will be tasked with leading that professional path initiative. So Feaster, who's a former WNBA player, and Rod Strickland will focus on educating the prospects on the professional path. So it's kind of just giving them information about what they can do, what the services, not services, but how they can assist in helping their career out, so to speak. This is kind of interesting to me in that I had G League President Malcolm Turner on about, I think it was February or March. No. It was after the season, so it must have been like in April on my podcast. And I asked him, why doesn't the league pursue players to play? Like, why don't they recruit players for the G League? And it was kind of the sentiment that I got, and what I sort of felt like the league does is they don't want to assume the path. They kind of want players to figure it out for themselves, right? there's a big responsibility that comes with a professional path because you're sort of assuming that these are the guys that are going to make it, have an NBA future ahead of them. So there's a huge responsibility that comes with selecting these players, right? I don't think the league takes that lightly. This is just such a stark contrast from my conversations with Malcolm Turner just 6 or 8 months ago when we were kind of discussing what their options were. And this is obviously in response to the NCAA report, essentially pointing the finger at the NBA for the one and done rule, which doesn't make sense. That's a whole other conversation, but this is sort of in response to that, giving teams an option or players an alternative for them to come to the G League instead. It's sort of, I don't say it washes the NBA's hands because they don't need to be absolved of anything, but I think it puts the pressure on NCAA to say, you know what, the NBA is doing something. They are providing this professional path. You know, what is the NCAA going to do to clean up their act? Because obviously the NBA doesn't have any problem with it. Yeah, they have no issue. It's, FBI agents aren't knocking on NBA coaches' doors. So I think that people were amiss and miffed by the NC2A report, essentially blaming outside forces for the circumstances of impropriety in the NC2A and men's basketball. So this is obviously a reactionary measure for that. And it's going to be interesting, right? We don't know who these players are. I mean, what they have said is that they're going to target players who haven't been recruited yet, which is interesting in of itself because you would think those top players are the ones you want, the ones that are going to have the most eyeballs in the product, the ones that are most assuredly going to have an NBA career. But I guess they don't want to be in competition with college, kids that are set on college. They don't want to even be knocking on those doors. So we'll see. Going to be interesting, though. I will say, though, that I am a bit confused. I shouldn't say confused, though. What I should say is just it's concerning to me about the pay disparity now for college and 18-year-olds and the rest of the G League. So for those who don't know, the prospect path select contracts, they'll pay $125,000 for a G League season. Current G League players themselves are contracted to $35,000. So, an 18-year-old out of high school who hasn't even had a lick of a professional career is making, more than twice, almost, three times, maybe 3 times more than what a G League pro is making. So that pay disparity, that pay gap, I think might cause some issues amongst players and talent and those sorts of things. That's one of the main concerns to me. The league doesn't seem to be concerned about it. My conversations and comments from Malcolm Turner, they think it's a unique approach to players who are in different parts of their professional career. So I think that's going to be the issue for the league, to kind of mandate and regulate, so to speak, if 18-year-olds are making more than guys who are, quote, proven pros. What does that say to the rest of the league? How do they value the rest of these players? Now, again, guys can make money in training camp. There's $50,000 training camp holds, the Exhibit 10s. The affiliate rule allows for $50,000, but even then, if you add the $50,000 plus the $35,000, that's $85,000. That's still less than what a select contract can make. So I think there's obviously some work to be done here. Perhaps maybe the G League standard contracts will become $125,000 somehow. I doubt that. What I do see, though, is G League contracts eventually, this is my guess, this is not anything that I am privy to or have knowledge of, but I'm guessing that you'll see G League contracts worth $50,000, and that'll match the Exhibit 10 affiliate training camp amount of $50,000. So when you add those together, it's up to $100,000 for G League players, which is, talking 4 or 5 years ago, is a far cry from the $13,000 they were making a year. So, I mean, that's a huge difference, obviously, and as far as paving the way for G League salaries. Is there more work to be done? Absolutely. I do think that salary issue is going to be problematic, even though the league doesn't say so. And also the distribution of this talent. That's something, Adrian Wojnarowski talked about in his article discussing the hiring of Rod Strickland and Allison Feaster. He mentioned that the league hasn't decided how to divvy up these players, and I'm sitting here thinking, why don't you just put them in the draft? Why are we not putting these prospects in the draft? I had a whole article written about how the draft has sort of declined over the years. Why don't you just add that talent in the draft and let teams pick them? If they don't want to take them, they don't want to take them. I mean, yes, they'd be out of, basketball then. They sacrificed a potential college career to play in the G League and then not get selected. That's the challenge, right? So for those who don't know, just because a player is drafted in the G League doesn't necessarily mean they own their NBA rights. So the conundrum is, do you use and utilize assets to develop a player that you might not even get a chance to draft the following year? And I think that's the challenge. I think there has to be some sort of machination in place for players or teams to be willing to afford developing a player. And I think maybe even if it's on the back end, I don't know, NBA salary cap relief of some sorts. If you develop this player, take them under your wing and put them in your roster, maybe you get some sort of salary exemption. There's guys that know more about the salary cap than I do, certainly, that could maybe talk on that. But I think that's something to consider as well. Maybe there's some sort of machination where teams are compensated, maybe not directly, obviously, with like a draft pick or things like that, but maybe they are rewarded, like I said, with a salary cap relief of some sort, maybe like a $5 million gift of sorts. I don't even know if that's possible with the CBA. Probably not, so I'm speaking out of turn. But I think there has to be some sort of incentive for teams to be willing to do this. Otherwise, it's all for naught, right? They're developing a guy who they might not even be able to reap the rewards from. So, like, why would a team like Denver, per se, this is a horrible example, right? Denver want to develop a player for a team like Portland? Or why would a team like LA want to develop a player that Golden State maybe takes? There's this whole conundrum here of, helping other teams and organizations to develop a player they might not even see on their roster. So that's the challenge, I think, of divvying up these guys. Now, there is the other side to it, which is, information is key in this league. Teams are talking to one another. They're trying to get all the information they can as far as players, talent, evaluations. So having that guy under your organization for a whole year, you kind of get to know the ins and outs of him, get to know what he's all about, how he prepares, things like that. Might give you an edge as far as draft stock. So, I mean, that's the other end of it too, right? So maybe you do know what he's capable of. Maybe you get your hands on him. Maybe you do know, first thing, you're not hearing it from a college coach or a college trainer or things like that. You're seeing it firsthand how this person, this 18-year-old, applies himself towards a professional career. And I think that's key too for some organizations. They value that information. They don't have to hear it secondhand. They see it firsthand. But I think the ultimate goal here, and I think I'm preaching to the choir, and I say this almost every week, is let's let 18-year-olds, let's eliminate one and done. That's obviously a given all the reports. But let's eliminate one and done and allow 18-year-olds to be drafted and then have them spend a year in the G League. It's still like a one and done, so to speak, but they spend a year in the G League acclimating to the pro lifestyle. And those contracts don't count against the salary cap. They still hold their rights. It adds leverage to the G League. Imagine if Zion Williamson was playing in the G League, perhaps. Maybe he didn't go to Duke. Is that a path someone wants to take? Perhaps. But, how many more people will be watching the Iowa Wolves or the Salt Lake City Stars or the Sioux Falls Skyforce if Zion Williamson was taken first overall in the NBA draft and was spending a year in the G League? So, it's not out of the question. Minor league baseball does a similar thing. Guys have to spend a year or two in the minors before they're called up to the majors, even top prospects. So, I think the way the NBA disseminates information, how they share it, and how games are easily accessible makes it a little bit different than minor league, obviously. So more eyes on your product is a good thing. So I hope that's the path they take. Obviously, from a G League standpoint, in my perspective, it'd be beneficial for me as well. But I think in order to leverage the G League as much as possible. That seems like the logical outcome. They still get guys 19 years old entering the league, but then they spend a year in the G League. I think the big hiccup in that is getting to 30 teams. You can't really legislate that or mandate that until 30 teams are on board. And I think that's why, also we're waiting for this to happen as well, because then we can see real change happening in the G League as far as salaries, player rights, drafting, those sorts of things have to happen once there's 30 teams. So we're left with Denver and Portland, essentially. New Orleans did announce their intentions to have a team in Birmingham, and I think 3 years after 2019-20, they're going to spend 3 seasons in Erie and then move to Birmingham. So that's exciting, but then we're down to 2 teams, Denver and Portland. And Portland, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, they have, we can come over here to twoways10days.com real quick, and of course we can see the two-way contract tracker right here. You can see here's all the players currently signed, two-way deals. And if you look, Portland Trailblazers sad, lonely, and empty. No two-way guys signed. So, I mean, even teams like New Orleans has 1 player signed. Denver has a couple of players signed. They don't have a G League team. They're still using them. And Thomas Welsh and Devon Akun-Purcell. So, I mean, it just seems like a waste. I mean, even Phoenix kind of scratching my head. They have their own G League team, yet they don't have 2 two-way guys. Seems like a waste of opportunity or space to develop guys, especially when you're a team in transition, trying to find new talent and bring guys on board. I think that only makes sense to have a pair of two-way guys. So I kind of scratched my head on that one too. So we will certainly see. But yeah, Portland, no G League team for them. That's, like I said, they're going to come in kicking and screaming. They were affiliated with the Idaho Stampede. They canceled that relationship and then said they could do it better in-house. Maybe they have. I mean, the record speaks for it themselves. I think that's going to do it for this episode, though, unless there's any other questions. Oh, we got to talk about the Santa Cruz Warriors. Let's talk Santa Cruz Warriors. 8-0 start. Incredible run for them. It's the second best start in league history. The RGV Vipers of 2013-14 have the best start at 9-0. Warriors have a chance to tie that on Monday night, tomorrow night, against the Agua Caliente Clippers. History could be in the making. That's going to be a fun game to watch. But just talking to the team, the organization, they're downplaying it. They're not paying attention to the record. They're not paying attention to anything else as far as, what is the best record in the league. They're taking it game by game, and what they have said is that success from individuals equals team success. So they're sharing in everyone's success, so to speak. One night it's Darius Morris. Another night it could be Michael Benajay. Another night it's Marcus Derrickson. So it could be a number of guys. It could be Juan Toscano Anderson, who's going to be playing for Mexico now. He's had a couple double-doubles since joining the team after missing 4 games, I believe, with ankle injury. So he's been productive as well. Kevin Young. They're all in there together. There's an emphasis on defense, which is uncharacteristic of the league. In a league where there's, pace is at an all-time high. So I think their league average was 99 points a game. That's what they've given up, which was the league best. They gave up 104 to the Salt Lake City Stars in a gritty win on Friday night to win 110-104. Darius Morris is clutch as ever. He was also named Player of the Week. 23 points. I think it was 23.3 points, 5.3 rebounds, 7 assists to lead Santa Cruz 3-0 the week prior. He's been fantastic. Very selfless these first few weeks of the season. Bank those wins now while you can, because if guys are going to get called up, guys might get injured. It's not going to be a healthy 50 games, so get those wins in while you can. I mean, they're already a third of the way to the goal of, or nearly a third of the way, to the goal of 30 wins. That's kind of the marker for the G League to get into the playoffs. That's the goal. But it's a really selfless team thus far. They're enjoying each other's success, and kudos to them. They're doing it very well. So they play Agua Caliente on Monday, and then they have a chance to break the record on Friday against the Texas Legends, who will be in town for a back-to-back. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be easy, that's for sure. And we can take a look at this one. Darius Johnson Odom. Let's take a look here. Dunk of the year, huh? Let's watch this. Here he goes, right here. Damn. Damn. Johnson Odom killing it. Let's do it one more time. Right there. Boom. Good night. Man. Iowa Wolves have struggled out the gate too, but I think their record isn't indicative of how successful they can be. So, again, still early in the season. Teams are still filling each other out. It's not like the NBA where you have like a month-long training camp to kind of develop chemistry and things of that nature. So, remains to be seen. But what I do want to say is thank you so much for watching today. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat right now. Hang on for a few seconds while anyone else has any thoughts thus far. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Again, check out twoways10days.com. Follow us on Twitter at 2ways10days. My Twitter handle is AdamJ_NBAGL for all your G League news. Again, The Grind. This is our site here. This is the show. I have archives. These are on Twitch archives for 2 weeks, at which point then they are put on YouTube. So you kind of see if you want to watch a previous episode, see what it's all about. Feel free to do so. Audio interviews, kind of talked about that before. It's there, archives. Kind of put the back burner on this, but this is all like a historical reference for the league. I've kind of trying to put this together as stuff gone by the wayside, which is actually in relation to an article I'm working on in reference to G League history. I had a chance to talk to Kent Davison yesterday, the head coach of the Roanoke Dazzle. Yes, that is a real team name. It did exist. Played out of Roanoke, Virginia from 2001 to 2006. So you can see the article, whatever it is I'm working on. It's a deep cut. So I hope to speak to a few more people as well, trying to gather information. Accuracy is important. I'm waiting for the league for confirmation too on this story, because that's important as well. So you can kind of look here, check out these photos here as well. Trip down memory lane for people. You can kind of see here Colorado 14ers. There's a trophy there. There's a championship ring. Columbus River Dragons. That was a team name as well. Yes. Dakota Wizards. That was a team before they became the Santa Cruz Warriors. Played out of Bismarck, North Dakota. Look at those guys. Oh, look at that. Dave Yeager, bobblehead. God bless him, right? Former head coach of the Dakota Wizards. Won a championship, actually, with them. So, one of, I believe, 4 head coaches with NBA G League experience. Him, Luke Walton, Nick Nurse, and Quinn Snyder. All were previously head coaches or assistants in the G League at one point. So it's only going to be more moving forward. You know, everyone's putting their mark on the G League, getting reps, getting experience in the league. That number's only going to go up. So if that does it, also if you have questions here, you can always reference our NBA G League FAQ. You get all kinds of questions here. Gives you the divisions. What are all these definitions here? It gives you information about rosters, how they're built, all that stuff, all that good stuff. Also, the two-way contract FAQ. Want to learn more about two-way contracts? You can do that here as well. Plenty of information there too. But I think that's going to wrap this up. So thank you for watching. It's been a fun few weeks of G League. It's only going to get more interesting as the season goes on. I am Adam Johnson, and we'll see you next time on The Grind. Thanks for watching.